Hello, the Historical Gamer here, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing something new, analysing level design. And the game we're going to be analysing the level design of is Sonic Unleashed. Though we will only be analysing the main day stages. This video will be split into 3 parts: the core design philosophy, general common themes about the level design, then the rapid fire section. Okay, now let's start with the core design philosophy. So first of all, we have the sheer linearity of Sonic Unleashed design. As you can probably see by the footage that's playing right now, it is essentially just a straight hallway. Now, while Sonic Unleashed still does keep the concept of set pieces in the game, most of the spectacle actually just comes from the sheer speed of the boost, which they could do because this was the first time the boost had appeared in a 3D game. Now, my next point is that while other Sonic games have lots of branching pathways that all interconnect and all provide different, meaningful gameplay, Sonic Unleashed doesn't really do that. With its extremely heavy focus on reaction time, it tends to value small shortcuts, which might give you a slightly different gameplay experience, but will always boot you back to the main path quite quickly. So let's look at an example of this. Now, after Sonic exits the 2D section, we go straight back into the streets of Apatos. You may have missed it, but on the right we see a second pathway. Then this next one is when Sonic comes off a spring, he can get into a trick ring using the air boost, which lets him go on a faster path, but as you can see, it loops back to the main path extremely quickly. It's only faster though because he misses all the obstacles on the lower path. Now this next one requires us to take a look into the 2D sections. Pretty much their entire design philosophy is focusing more on platforming than the 3D sections and using the Sonic 2 design philosophy for most of them, where you have 2 rows stacked on top of each other, and the higher path is faster but harder to stay on, and the lower path is easier but a lot slower. Though, as seen in the gameplay you're seeing, using the homing attack, it still manages to lean into the reaction time based gameplay seen in this game's 3D sections. Next point is that the homing attack functions less as an attack in this game, and more as a movement tool. This is obviously seen in homing attack chains, but that's not quite what I mean. As seen, the player messes up, not getting into the trick ring from the spring. They then use the homing attack as a tool to recover. Now this is more of a general point, but memorization of timing is definitely the key to success in this game. This especially being shown in the quick time events. And while the game definitely does contain gimmicks, such as the bobsleigh, they're often secondary to the set pieces and general reaction time based gameplay. This is probably because they decided to give most of the gimmicks to the werehog. And while in later boost games such as Forces, steering is practically done for you, in Sonic Unleashed they managed to make it a challenge in itself, but not in the way of bad ground handling like Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic Frontiers. No, the challenge mostly comes from your reaction time, as well as, like Secret Rings, Sonic's car-like control, but this is balanced out by the speed control methods being the quick step and the drift. Of course though, Sonic is given a fair amount of time to react. Now, as I said before, The level design of Sonic Unleashed is essentially just hallways. This is cleverly masked by Sonic's sheer speed when going through them, as well as the equally clever use of visuals, being the streets of Apatos, which really do just look like you're going through a street full of buildings, though quite stylized. And for all unexplained mechanics, intuitive one-button prompt tutorials will appear on the screen, like the boost for Apatos, but it only appears just before a crowd of enemies, though the tutorials are all given in the exact context they're needed. The last point of this section of the video is about automation. Our last point for this section is about automation. The boost formula, by nature, is going to be quite automated. But in Sonic Unleashed, when automation takes full control away from the player, it is always just before quite an intense stretch of gameplay. This corkscrew comes before a rail switching section. Then there's coming out of this 2D section, which launches you straight into a 3D section with a lot of reaction time based shortcuts. That's all for the core design philosophies. Now, let's move on to just reoccurring themes throughout the game. So first up, we have the fact that higher parts generally contain more rings. This is because rings fill the boost gauge, which allows you to go faster, a suitable reward for staying on the higher path. The lower path, though, will still give you plenty. Next is the fact that stages generally start with rings, which is something that you've just seen. Next, you can see that the transition from 3D to 2D is seamless, this section using wall running to do it. Then some nicely placed jazz pads bring you back to 2D. Now 2D's purpose in general is to bring more of an element of platforming to the stage, but they'll often have other purposes as well. This one here allowing for more seamless use of the wall jump and the slide. Now in general, you'll find that usually a quick stepping obstacle ends every stage, and occasionally a rail grinding obstacle. Most of the time, these quick stepping obstacles are some laser robots, which you have to hit by hitting the robots in front of them by using the boost. Next, you'll find that a lot of reactionary obstacles in Sonic Unleashed are built into the environment. This is most evident in places such as Jungle Joyride's opening or Arid Sands' quick-stepping section. Though it can be seen in Rooftop Run, this is less an obstacle, but you can hop on the grind rail here to make you go faster, and the grind rail is a fence. The grind rail is only faster though because you don't have to drift. Then, as you can see, instead of having bulk standard Eggman robots homing attack to recover, they use balloons, which fit more into the environment. Also showing you the contrast between the Werehog fighting Dark Gaia creatures and the Hedgehog fighting Eggman robots. Next up, we can see the camera not only shifts around to be cinematic, but also to let you see more of what's ahead of you when it's needed, or what's to the side of you when it's needed. Here's an example with these Eggman robots. That wraps up common themes. Now, time to get into the rapid fire section. You may not be able to see all of what I'm saying in the actual footage you're seeing. Whenever there's a turn that requires the drift, it's always wide and curved in a way which you can use the drift properly on it. The lightspeed dash is properly utilised. All longer moments of spectacle are interactive. This also applies to water running sections, also not being overutilized. There is an interesting dynamic between do you want EXP from killing enemies, or are you just interested in taking shortcuts for time? And lastly, most of the platforming is arranged in a way where it's fit for the controls. And that's the end of the rapid fire section. This was the Historical Gamer, and thank you for watching this video. If you liked the video, remember to like and subscribe if you liked multiple. Also comment for feedback. I really appreciate it and will make sure to read your comments. Thank you and goodbye.